Good morning, gentlemen. Mark, a.k.a. Lord Hammer from the Tor Syndicate. And my question is actually for Blaine. As we get closer...
Diva.
Hey, we've interviewed you twice. No. As we get closer to the imminent launch of the game, and obviously, unless you're under a rock, it looks like it's going to be big. It's going to be a big launch. What trouble or what do you foresee as a challenge trying to build and grow a team that will scale accordingly to properly receive the load and provide services so that you don't have your servers fall on their side day one?
Well, sure, the list is as long as the building is long, right? But essentially, that's exactly what I'm focused on right now, is building out actually my team. So I'm going to have a team of folks working for me, both technical resources, production resources, even have some design resources, QA resources right now. And our entire focus is just about making sure that currently testing is up and running effectively, but also that we are preparing for eventual launch. And so obviously we recognize the challenges that come with a game of our scale, a potential scale, and also the excitement around the game. And so we're just completely focused on making sure tech, tools, everything is ready for a successful launch because, we figure we get one chance, first BioWare AAA MMO experience, and we want to make sure that the service component, technical component, all of that all lives up to a BioWare level of quality.
Right now, Blaine is the only person who can actually take the entire project offline because he's the only person that's allowed to send and say, everybody in the company must, at this time, go and stand on this exact spot on Hutta and jump up and down for 15 minutes and see what happens. And those are actually really fun tests.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Hey guys, Justin Lowe from DarthVader.com. Just real quick, I have a two-parter, and it can be answered pretty quick. About the Datacrons, there's a lot of sort of discussion in fighting about the reward that you guys chose for it.
Yep.
So if you could speak about the reward that you guys chose, if that's going to change at launch, if that's in flux, and then also speaking more to Datacrons and that sort of concept extending into other parts of the game. Space combat seems kind of ripe for stuff like that, and different things involving story being placed inside certain points as sort of exploration elements inside these little mini games. So could you speak on that and if that's going to be possible in other areas of the game, not even limited to space combat, but...
Sure. So the explosion around the Datacron stuff seemed to primarily be that the Datacrons do actually affect stats. And that was a big one. Everyone said, oh my god, but then we have to get all this stuff. But so here's what we know. We know that the people who are worried about the stats are the people who will collect 9,000 flowers to get a tiny stat increase. It's not going to be any issue for them to go on to whatever website's going to have it, 15 minutes after we launch, and go find all the Datacrons. The people who are playing more as casual RPG guys, who are playing more for the experience, they've got fun stuff to explore. None of the Datacrons are ever in places you can't get back to. So none of them are ever put in a phase or anywhere that you're going to get limited to. So you can play, the best way to play it is to play just explorative, get them when you find them, try to search the map, use them as a fun thing, and then later, the only time that a +1 in aim is ever going to make a difference to anybody is endgame. And at endgame, you are going to be so massively powerful that if you want to go very quickly and take a couple hours and run back through the game and get every Datacron you missed, it really should not be much of an issue. Outside of that, we never take anything that's going to represent balance outside of core game. So you're never going to have to go into the space game has upgrades and cool stuff for the space game. PvP has upgrades and cool stuff for PvP. You're never going to have to go outside of the core game to get upgrades that are going to affect your basic stat, right? The Datacrons are in the core game. You're running around, you're out in the world. It's a really fun part of it. And yeah, it's not going to make any impact to the endgame guys who, if it's really important to them and they didn't want to do it in exploring, they'll just run through and go grab them all.
And I think the last point is the most important one, at least to me, is when you're playing the game, it's fun. And so what are we about? We're about finding fun gameplay mechanics, and it's a cool thing where it's hey, for those of us that have been platform gamers, whatever, it's a new way to explore the game. It's something else to do. It's a cool activity to do within a given world or planet that you maybe wouldn't have gone to explore that particular area. And so it's just a cool reward for players, and we look at it from a fun standpoint.
And you guys get to see it and see. I mean, that's what we saw. We just had a press event in San Francisco, and we got to see people playing it. And people get really excited when they see the Datacron sitting up somewhere and are like, how the heck am I supposed to get that? And people are, when they realize, oh, I need to force jump I need to get an enemy to get up into that space and then force it. Like, it's fun stuff.
Well, thank you.
And one of the big differences, for those of you who've played games with bad reward systems, where the hidden thing is actually in a place that no one humanly would have ever seen, the datacrons actually show up on your map. So as you're walking by, you're going to see this thing on your map and start looking around and going, where the... So we do drive you towards it. It is not you have to read a fact, fall down a well, not die, land on a cliff, go through a hidden space.
Jeff Hollis from Tour Wars. We understand that the decisions you make in terms of story have consequences. Are those consequences primarily affecting the quest line or the story arc you're in right now, or is it more of a long-term effect when it comes to the game overall?
So that's kind of a double-sided one. So as far as story goes, so story affects story a lot. We just go into that video where all I say is story for 9 minutes. So there are story consequences that go through the whole game. There are literally things that we put them under the list of things world designers hate. There are things we like to do on the origin worlds that end up coming in the end of chapter 3, right, to bite you in the butt. There are things that build up slowly over time. Your dark side, light side stuff will actually open up paths and close down paths and titles and whole places in your thing that you'll never see before. What we do not do is futz with gameplay, right? One of the things that's incredibly important to us, when you roll out at your top level, we never ever want anyone to look at you and go, oh, you played your story wrong? We don't want you in our raid, right? Oh, you played a light side Zabrak. No. We need dark side Twi'leks for this raid, right? So by end game, all of this stuff really has to basically even out. And not a separate but equal, because we know that has never worked in MMO. There's always somebody that's going to be like, well, but actually 1%. So it kind of has to disappear. That said, there are some things you can do gameplay-wise that will make your life a little more difficult. It is possible to make some mistakes, but you have to really, really do it on purpose. It is still possible. There are still companion characters you can kill. And they're still dead. So if later somebody's like, oh, you know what would be perfect for this? I'm going to grab this guy, you grab that guy, and you're like, yeah. But I killed that guy? But it's not like, in a lot of the traditional BioWare games, like for companions is a good example. If you were going to drive a companion off, or they were going to leave or something, we could do it as sort of a surprise. You know, you really make somebody mad, and they're like, that's it, I'm out of here. And you're like, whoa! Reload. We can't do that in Tor. Right? So if it's going to happen in Tor, you're going to be very aware of it. There's going to be a couple different nodes in a row where you really have to confirm, nope, I'm really for sure absolutely killing you, because years later you're still dealing with it, right?
And if you do drive them off, any chance of them coming back? Anything you can do?
No, one of the things we've talked about is, people ask do I get a replacement companion, or do I, no. No, if we're going to put...
Dead is dead? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, dead is dead. If we're going to put if we're going to put a few of those really hardcore ones in there, we have to make sure that they stick.
All right. Thanks very much.
And I think you guys have heard us say this a lot over the last few years, but it's all about, really sticking with the mantra of making emotionally compelling story that matters within the gameplay. And I think that, we'll keep saying this, and you guys will see some of it as you play it, or if you have already. But I think as you get further and further into the storyline, like Daniel's group has done an incredibly good job of making sure that there are very, very difficult choices. So there are choices that you will just literally be shocked and be like, oh my God, I don't know if I can choose between these things within each storyline. So I think that's what's important.
One of the really fun things to watch as people are playing is you can always see the face, right? You always see this face, which is the I did something evil face. But you also get to watch people change their storylines and change how they're approaching it. One of the things we got to see again from the latest testing group is what happens when you put light side and dark side requirements on epic gear that somebody gets. And how fast do people's morals fall apart if they've got a purple item with massive stats sitting in their backpack, and if they were just a little bit more evil, they were a little bit more dark side they could use. So where do your morals stand in the face of loot? It's a decision.
Yeah, hello, Marian, swtr.eu. Daniel, I want a story-related answer for why lightsabers do not cut off body parts.
Why do lightsabers not cut off body parts?
They hadn't advanced the technology in our timeline because we're so far before the original movies.
Yes, and this time the lasers were very weak.
Yeah.
that one's clearly not a. There are some things that. So the BioWare mantra is always story trumps everything until it runs into gameplay. So obviously, there are body parts cut off in the Star Wars trilogy. In the Star Wars trilogies, they are incredibly dramatic and important and huge scenes. You do not actually watch, even in the new ones where there's lots of Jedi, the Jedi just chopping people into little parts constantly. Star Wars is fantasy, and it's very friendly fantasy for the most part. So the vast majority of the time that you're going to see a fight, you should be watching guys clash and then somebody fall down. So honestly, the reason that we don't chop people into little tiny pieces is because it's not appropriate to the feel and the look of Star Wars.
And
right?
It's not because you want to get a higher rating?
Well, we want to have a rating that is appropriate to Star Wars. Right? Star Wars has always been for everybody. And we want it to dramatically feel like it. Luke gets his hand cut off, and it's a big deal. Like, if we were going to do it and make it feel appropriate, the server would have to stop and look at you and be like, whoa! You totally lost your hand. If you were just chopping people up into tiny pieces, like, the only place I've ever seen it work, honestly, is Lego Star Wars. Because, it doesn't feel horrific.
Okay, would you mind asking you what do you do if you want to write a story and you say, well, crap, and this lasts over days and you don't find something which is really cool and engaging? What do you do? And this you are going on and say, okay, I do this. Okay.
We have the great thing about having a team of writers is when you've got a dozen people around there, you've always got somebody to go to. There are different people who are really good at different sorts of plots, and you've always got people to brainstorm in. What literally happens, you can always see when a writer's stuck, because you get we need brainstorms and I want the one this afternoon, and then everybody gets in a room and throws stuff in a wall until we've got it, right? Like if somebody's trying to do an action piece and they're normally, you're going to meet all the writers at lunch, and Rebecca writes the Inquisitor, and she's really, really good with the deep sort of complicated, we're doing bad stuff to people and doing secret, but sometimes she's got to write an action plot. She's almost always going to write grab Charles, who's our trooper writer. And you're going to bring him in, etc. So when you've got a big team, you've got a deep talent pool, it's a lot easier to get around those pieces.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Hi guys, my name's Tom from Tour Talk, and I was just wondering, you have the player starships being in the game, and a big activity what players are going to be able to do on those starships is crafting. And in capital cities, we know that we'll be able to train and go there for auction houses. What other incentives will you have for players to go to capital cities? Because it seems like there's a lot of people on the forums that are sort of afraid that Starships is going to take away from going back to capital cities.
I think on that, I'll just give the short answer. You can, but I think for me, a lot of course, any MMO is the social element, right? So if you're hanging out on your ship and that's all you're ever doing, then you're not participating in that sort of larger MMO experience. So I think that's definitely going to drive people to capital cities as well as other areas. Another really important part of our game is just various quest types, and so we've really put a heavy focus on making sure there are lots of opportunities and incentives for players to group up in order to do specific quests within every single world that we've presented. And so that's something we've focused on heavily to make sure just we encourage that overall social interaction. But overall, specifics to capital worlds beyond.
So one of the big ones is your capital city is your capital city.
Yeah.
Which means Imperial intelligence is on Droman Kos, right? The emperor's on Droman Kos. Spoilers. The Republic military is centered on court. Like, you actually are going to be sent by your quests repeatedly back to your capital city, back to turn in. You're out doing something as a trooper and you get called in to have to go face the Senate, right? So you're going back there. But also, all of your crafting stuff is also on the capital cities. And who's not in your ship is a vendor. So you can craft on your ship, but really what's happening, remember, you have to think about the whole thing for the crew skills, is your crew is crafting on your ship. But they're usually doing it while you're somewhere else. You're not standing there watching them do it. That's the whole beauty of it. Because the vendors and all this stuff, so you're on the capital ship, you've got a guy who can send stuff back to your ship, who's right over by your vendor. You've got a place where you can interact with your cargo hold. So you're most likely actually going to be doing your stuff there, and then sending them back to your guys who are on the ship. But if you need to set up some stuff right before you leave your ship when you're on a new planet, it's there for you.
All right, sweet, thank you.
Hi, I'm Carla
Hello.
from Corellian Run Radio.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going pretty good. How's it going with you guys?
All right.
Okay, this is like a 2-segment question. We have one segment of people or fan base that was disappointed to see the role of companions diminish. What would you like to say to those players who want companions to play a more significant role in Tor? And then we look at the poll on your website that says about 9% says they won't use companions at all. And if that's the case, what kind of combat or content, will they be missing if they plan to go that path?
Well, so 2 steps for that. So right now, and it's really important to know that all this stuff is in flux. All this stuff goes through testing. Right now, what we're talking about is a 4-person party, and that's including companions. This does not diminish the role of companions if you are somebody who was not going to play in a full party all the time. And those people, honestly, you're not interacting with your companions a lot anyway. You're already trying to manage a giant 4-person party. So for those people who are really into their companions, you're probably going to play in smaller parties. What it does mean is that our companions have become much stronger. We've actually not diminished the role of them. We've actually upped the role of them because they're getting very close to being full party members. There's some other very exciting stuff that is coming later about companions. It's going to change everything you guys are thinking about how we deal with them. So they're getting stronger, not weaker. It's making the game very, very fun to 2-man, for instance. For those people who are saying they're going to play without a companion, what they're basically saying is they're either going to be in a full 4-person party or they're going to die. The game is not built to play without companions.
Like it. Thank you.
And I think I'll just tag onto that. I mean, you've already touched on it, but I think the idea here is that it makes it so much easier for you to get pickup groups going because you can actually augment your group in whatever way that you want. If you need a certain spec, you need a healer, but you only have 3 people, you don't have to actually wait to find somebody who can be a strong healer. You can bring in a healing companion to actually help out.
Yeah, once the AI kicked in, which was just in this latest build, where your healers will heal people who are not you in the companion, like people were running around. And it's harder to do because you don't have the AI is never going to replace a person exactly. But they were doing 4-person heroics with 3 people and then 1 companion healer who's running around from person to person. And it works really well.
Hi, Serge from SW Tor Life. I actually have to ask this question, so don't mind me.
Okay.
So, how do fat body style Imperial agents, how do they ever pass their physical exam?
That is a great question.
But I have
I think, can I take this one?
Sure.
I think if you picture a sumo wrestler, right, in your mind, and sumo actually requires some agility. It also requires a lot of physical
strength.
Fitness. And so I think that's, if you think of a sumo wrestler as an agent, it's certainly possible.
Yeah, one of the things when you look at the fat body type, obviously, you'll notice is there's a huge amount of muscle actually on those guys, right? Their arms are bigger than my body. They are not big flabby dude. But also, especially for the Imperial agent, the whole point of being a spy is that somebody doesn't guess.
Okay, cool.
I like that too.
That's a good. But actually, the question is more towards Blaine, and we've seen Tryon having problems with their Rift launch because of hacking of their accounts, and then we have like hacking in PvP in DCUO. That's the most recent accounts, and you're going to be probably in charge on preventing such stuff. Can you talk more about that or elaborate a bit about it?
Sure. Without going into specifics, I hate to be general about it, but I mean, obviously, again, sort of going back to my previous answer, we understand the expectations around our game. We're certainly watching the launches of all those games, seeing the problems that they have, and fortunately, we're at a place in development where we can actually look at that and say, okay, how do we make sure that doesn't happen for Star Wars: The Old Republic? So security is extremely important to us. We're going to make sure we do everything we can to make sure that we're as secure as we can be at launch so we don't experience those types of problems if it's at all avoidable.
The thing is, like, the team you got for making the game is really huge, and so I'm guessing like there's a lot of resources that you have to put into stuff like other stuff that people never think about, and that's anti-cheating and stuff.
Sure, absolutely, and that's something we're aware of. And with the experience on our team, various members that have launched lots of other games have experience in this area, so it's something that we did place importance on very early in development, and so we've been looking at all the way along, and we want to make sure that we have the best possible launch from a security standpoint as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys, Wesco from Torcast. So I have a story-related question.
Sure.
One thing is that there are, like you said before, as soon as people know about the datacrons, 10 minutes after the game launches, there'll be a guide on the internet for this is how you do it. And so one thing you're going to have to be concerned about, I mean, you guys are spending so much time on writing spoilers are going to be a big thing. Will there be enough variety as you go through the story that even if I read someone's entire playthrough of like, here's my entire playthrough of how I played the bounty hunter, I could play the game and the game would actually be different? Or is it just kind of variation on the same theme? Like, is there enough branching to not ruin it?
That's a really interesting question to sort of say. One, I don't know why you went and read somebody's entire...
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, if you read an
if you
entire
don't want to know
if you
what's
read
going
an
to
entire
happen.
fact front to back, I'm more worried about the versions of the Barons chat. And there's going to be like somebody guy who's like his entire thing is to just stand on top of a thing and yell spoilers. But I mean, there is as much or more variation in every class story as there was in all of KOTOR. So there are definitely going to be whole branches you didn't see, whole branches he didn't go through. But some of the big major plot points are obviously, if you've read through or gone through all the way, like it's going to spoil it. So I very quickly, I expect to see the emergence culturally of spoiler-free servers and places that sort of, reinforce. I think our version of the RP thing is actually going to be the shut the hell up server.
I'm going to write that down.
Yes.
As a follow-up, are you guys going to have anything in place, like almost like a, let's say you find out you're Revan. Are you going to like filter Revan in chat so no one sees that you're Revan?
Well, I mean, and that's, since you guys are here, we may as well, like, you're all Revan. Inside, that is actually the grand reveal of the entire game.
Right. All right.
Right, because then people are like, hey, did you read the new book that's, what?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm Evan from Mos Eisley Radio, and I was just wondering about the Sith Empire as we see it in game is obviously meant to be very evocative of original trilogy Empire, but might seem to the lore nerds that it's a little incongruous to established Sith lore from other sources. How did you reach the conclusion that this form of the Sith Empire was the direction you wanted to take it?
So there were two things, really. One was giving people who... The Sith Empire as it exists out in the EU is, not terribly congruous with itself. And this happens a lot in the extended universe because Lucas is very free with letting the writers go and develop their own pieces. So we had to take all the pieces that were sort of floating out there in different ways and try to put them together and sort of do religious studies and say, okay, these two things seem to contrast, but we're going to go ahead and say that they sort of make sense because of this. We also wanted to make Star Wars fans feel comfortable when they got there. The vast majority of people have no idea what the Sith Empire or any of this other stuff is. They know the movies, they know the basic feel, they know this. Also, for me, one of the things that was important and why I took and said, okay, it was okay to make all the Imperials British, even though it's mixed up later, is we know, spoiler, at some point the Sith Empire is apparently gone by 3,000 years later, and a lot of this iconography and a lot of these things have now melded into the Galactic Republic. So we know these two cultures are going to merge. So what we did is we literally sat down and we looked at all of the things that were culturally Star Wars and we said, okay, you know what? These things all came from the Sith Empire. These started here. These are the things that Palpatine does later is him doing throwbacks to the earlier Empire. Later, all of these will come together to be one, but this is where the influence came from to begin with.
All right, awesome, thank you.
We also know that all English people are evil, as evidenced by Stephen Reed.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Hello, Steven from Führer. Some new crew skills were revealed in PC Gamer, especially archaeology. Will we see some Easter eggs about Indiana Jones? Maybe?
About Indiana Jones? No, no Indiana Jones references. One of the things you guys...
How about Willow? Willow?
No Willow.
Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck.
One of the things you guys have noticed is that... this is one of the places that I come down 100%. There is no fourth wall breaking in Tor. None. There are no references to later store stuff. There is no references. There are no Simpsons references and Princess Bride quotes. And we have a real world and a real place. There is a reason that a lot of the gaming writing is still fairly immature. And you see this? You never see this in a big movie. Never. You never see the guys from Lord of the Rings stop and do a Family Guy shtick. Like, you just don't, right? This is, so when you're in Tor, you're in Tor. But archaeology is pretty fun, and you do get to learn a whole bunch of stuff about for instance, we have, the Datacrons have the great, Joe Barry wrote the entire history of the Star Wars universe as we know it, which is attached to the Datacrons, and there's a lot of stuff in there.
So there will be some Easter eggs about Star Wars, but not about everything.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Hey guys, Bill from Ask a Jedi. Hey, quick question, I guess maybe more for Daniel, but what's the current stance on cross-faction socialization? We've heard sort of things before that you could communicate, maybe cooperate or not, but are there neutral sanctuary location cities? Are the factions ever meant to mingle in some way, commerce or whatnot?
So the factions absolutely mingle, and they mingle early. By the time that you get, basically the first world that you ever get to actually commingle is Nar Shaddaa, and you can't fight. You could if you got to their areas, but it's pretty hard to do. The Promenade is ruled by the Hutts. You get to meet each other, but you can't fight. By the next world, you're just right in each other's faces. It's pretty hard to keep anybody from doing anything in the desert of Tatooine. It's not a lot of law enforcement. As far as socialization, it's a huge question, and it's gone back and forth multiple times, and probably will continue to in testing. There is a big balance between realism, right? In some other games, they've not let the factions talk, and it's made sense because they were actually different species and they spoke different languages. Doesn't really make a lot of sense in Star Wars because everyone's supposed to speak Galactic Basic. But having the guy who immediately kills you and teabags you for half an hour and talks about your mom is also not terribly fun. So it is going to be to them. Yes, right. Well, to that guy. Also a matter of opinion. I understand. So for us, it's continually a customer service versus, how we want the universe to feel. So it's going to be testing. We're really going to have to see. You are not going to do team up superhero with supervillain buddy picture things and go kill somebody together.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel.